Well, good evening. It is 5 o'clock. I am Tom Burrows, Commissioner at Large, District 2. Tonight, however, I will be acting as Mayor Pro Tem due to the unavailability of Mayor Garner. Before I call the meeting to order, I want to announce that some commissioners, staff, and the public are attending remotely via Zoom, by phone, or on site. All participants joining by phone should mute their phones when not speaking to avoid background noise. During the meeting, please make sure that you announce yourself by name and title every time you speak, so the public that is observing knows who is speaking. Please be sure you speak directly into a microphone so that the public can hear your comments and an accurate record of the meeting is made. This is critical given the number of remote participants and is the current guidance from the Kansas Attorney General. I will now call this meeting to order. Would the clerk please call roll?
Roll call. Hill.
Here.
Kane.
Here.
Lopez.
Here.
Stites.
Here.
Davis.
Here.
Bynum.
Here.
Townsend.
Here.
Burns. We have an absence memo. Ramirez.
Here.
Burrows.
Here. Thank you, Madam Clerk. I will ask if there's been any revisions to tonight's agenda.
There are no revisions to the agenda this evening.
Thank you. This evening, we have two action items before us, committee. Item 1, resolution approving Lanier United LLC development agreement. Clerk, do you want to read or do you want me to read? I can read if you prefer. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Yes, good evening. You are hereby notified that a special meeting of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas, pursuant to rules of procedure 601 et sec, is to be conducted in a hybrid format in the commission chambers, lobby level of the municipal office building, 701 North 7th Street, Kansas City, Kansas, on Thursday, April 11th, 2024 at 5 p.m. regarding Lanier United LLC and Victory Hills Industrial Revenue Bonds.
We're going into the. Yes. Thank you. Please.
The first item we have on the agenda is a resolution requesting approval of a development agreement for a project located at 500 Minnesota Avenue with Lanier United LLC, as requested by the members of the Board of Commission requesting this special hearing.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. As you have heard, the first item is the approval of a resolution. I will ask the governing body how they would prefer to proceed. Should we have a presentation from the developer and then entertain questions from the commission? What is the preference? Seeing no recommendations. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Commissioner Davis.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I would prefer that we first get information about the project just to get everybody up to date and then do questions after. If my colleagues agree or disagree, please let me know.
Thank you. Yes, the question I would have, do we have the applicant in attendance this evening?
Mayor
Yeah.
Pro Tem, we do have Mr. Lanier online.
Okay, thank you. We will get to Mr. Lanier just as soon as we finish with the questions here. Commissioner Lopez.
Yeah, Commissioner Burns was wanting this pushed because he wanted to be here. This is in his district, but I don't know, that would be possible. However, to reschedule it, I guess, so he can be here, like that's his district.
I appreciate that. It has come to my attention that there was a letter from Mr. Burns that was sent to part of the commission. Do you have a copy of that letter that can be read publicly?
I don't believe that I would on my phone. Hold on. Dear fellow commissioners, if some of you may know, I am scheduled for knee surgery on April 9th, 2024, and will be out a few days following, resulting in my absence from the upcoming April 11th, 2024 special meeting. I understand one of the agenda items for this meeting is the Lanier project. With this project taking place in my district, I respectfully request this item be rescheduled to provide me the opportunity for input. I've received many inquiries from my constituents and they deserve answers at the very least. I hope you will consider my request to reschedule this agenda item. Sincerely, Bill Burns.
Thank you, legal. Comments from those that called the meeting in reference to the request? Seeing none. Okay, we will move forward. I guess at this time we'll open the issue for discussion. We have Mr. Lanier online at the request of Commissioner Davis. It is requested that we hear about the project. And I'm assuming that we were going to hear about that from Mr. Lanier. So clerk, if you will connect Mr. Lanier, please.
Mr. Lanier.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Fantastic. Thank you again for all coming out this evening regarding this project. As many of you this is a project that has been contemplated many times within the 5th Minnesota corridor.
Mr. Lanier,
This is a mixed use.
we're having trouble hearing you. Can you speak a little
yes.
louder?
You know, I can try to come in a different way. Any better? Why don't I go out and come back in?
Okay.
I'll try that here. You can continue. Can you hear me okay now? No.
That's better.
Let me know and I can try a different way. This is the project that has come through the office. We received, I'll talk fast. We Planning Commission, and this evening is that we are looking for an contract just to complete our financing. We did request this in January.
Mr. Lanier, we're losing you.
Just to get to the end of March, but that was okay. Let me go out and come. I'm sorry about that. Continue.
Commissioner Davis.
Thank you. I believe staff and Mr. Lasala may have some context, and then once tech support and all that good stuff is hashed out, we can hear from Mr. Lanier, hopefully. But I know Mr. Lasala has been giving me eye contact. So Chair, it's up to you, but I think we can get some better audio and clarity on what we're talking about here.
Mr. Lasala, you've been called to the podium.
Commissioners, my name is Todd Lasala. For those of you who have not seen me before, I'm your outside legal counsel for economic development projects, and I've done that for you for a long time. I would be happy to provide you a little procedural history about this project, a very brief overview about what it is, and then a couple of changes in the document that you have before you. And then, of course, I'd be happy to answer any questions. The procedural history is this. The original development agreement for this project was approved and signed in March of 2020. Between July 30th of 2020 and July 31st of 2021, we did 3 or 4 amendments to the project, most of which were about adjusting schedule. We were working with Mr. Lanier on a closing, trying to get to a closing in late 2021. However, one of his lenders was not quite ready to go. He asked the UG for an extension so that lender could be ready and prepared for closing. That extension never came before the commission. At that point, the project stalled. It eventually came back to this body, and was approved on April 27th, 2023. Modified, amended, and restated development agreement was approved in April of 2023. Importantly, that development agreement gave Mr. Lanier as the developer 270 days to get through all of the conditions in the development agreement, including financing. And it specifically said that if the conditions were not satisfied by that time, the agreement would automatically terminate. When we got to January 22nd, the 270th day, we determined that the conditions were not satisfied at that time. The agreement therefore automatically terminated. And a couple of days later, we sent Mr. Lanier confirming that and articulating the two conditions that were not satisfied. My understanding is, actually not my understanding, we have looked at one of those two conditions, and at this point, it is now satisfied. It was about the management agreement. It is now satisfied. Here's the very briefest summary possible about what the project is. The project would call for the demolition of the existing Reardon Center building and replacing it with a 90,000 square foot mixed use development. That would include 85 to 100 apartment units, 7,000 square feet of retail and other commercial space on the first floor, and a 7,500 square foot smaller conference center that could hold events up to about 325 people. The financing for that project, it's about a $25 million project overall, would include a CID, an existing CID that's been there since 2013, which is a 2% add-on sales tax. That would be capped at $3.3 million. A TIF, 20-year TIF, based on 85% of the property tax increment. That would be capped at $4.2 million. There's a $1 million contribution of transient guest tax from within this district, a $1 million UG contribution from the Reardon Center Maintenance Fund. And that's a total incentive package of about $9.5 million. That's about 38% of the total project cost. That's really what's on the table. The document that's in your packet tonight is really more or less identical to the one that the commission approved in April of 2023 with two noteworthy differences. Difference number one is that it changes the condition period, and it would give Mr. Lanier another year from signing this to satisfy conditions. And I believe that now the only condition out there to be satisfied is the private financing condition, where he shows us that he has equity and debt when combined with these incentives to complete the project. The other change, and I will admit to you, we have not talked to Mr. Lanier about this, but the UG has been carrying the legal fees for this project since April of 2023, actually before that. And what this would do would be allow the UG to reimburse itself for its legal fees for this before Mr. Lanier gets his pursuit costs or other development fees and costs. And we'd get that out of the CID. So those are literally the only two changes of substance in the document. There's some recitals and stuff, but the two changes of substance are those. It's the date and us sort of leapfrogging ahead of him with your legal fees to get those paid before he gets his. Happy to answer any questions, Commissioner, but that's the summary of where I think we've been, what the project is, and the two differences in the document.
Committee, any questions? Mr. LaSala, I have a couple of questions, if I may. The
Sure.
365 days starts when? From today?
If you were to, it'd be from the date that you signed. So probably not today, but if we signed tomorrow, yes.
So you said one of the two conditions was met. What can you share what the two conditions were and which one of them was met? And maybe if you have insight, tell us why the other one may not have been met.
Sure. The two conditions that were outstanding were the private financing condition and the Reardon Center management agreement. And our document got pretty specific about things we wanted in that management agreement. So as Mr. Lanier was coming to the end of the last condition period, he did send us a management agreement, but it was just missing some of the things that were required by our development agreement. He has since amended that management agreement, added those requirements from our development agreement. And so we can check the box on that condition. It is satisfied. The one that my understanding, and he'll be able to speak to this better than me, but my understanding is that as of today, he does not have his private financing in place. So I really think the only condition left is his private financing. And Mr. Chairman, I think he could probably tell you better than I could why he doesn't have that in place today.
Well, thank you. And I think I wanted to ensure that we knew what conditions were met and which ones weren't.
Absolutely.
And it's not about being punitive. It's about being knowledgeable about where we are in this project. I believe this is the 7th amendment to the original plan. Would that be correct? Or 6th or 7th?
There were 4, there was an original agreement, 4 amendments, that's 5. In April, you did a 6th amended restated development agreement. So if you signed this, it would be the 7th time this has come before you and been voted on.
So, Mr. Lasala, you've done a lot of contracts for us for economic development. Have you ever seen one that has this many amendments to it over I'm stating almost a 4-year period now?
Sadly, the answer is yes. Development is hard and there is some evolution on these. I have seen amendments that go into the teens. I wouldn't say that's typical, but I would say it's unusual that we ever have a development agreement that's not amended at some point. So is this a lot of amendments? Yeah, but certainly not the most I've ever seen.
Thank you. I do have I did see a light a minute ago from a commissioner. Did you have a question? Please, Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. Going back, just so that I affirm my understanding, you said with the legal costs, it's coming out of the CID. So meaning it's money that's already there, we're just not going to distribute to Mr. Lanier or recuperating for the.
That's exactly right, Commissioner. Because this CID has been in place since 2013, and it was originally for the convention center, for the hotel. All of those improvements that were a part of the original CID have been made and paid for. So this thing has continued to sit there and generate costs. So there is a pot of money there right now that's available. And really, this is about the UG who's been paying us, reimbursing itself for the legal fees. And if you were to approve this and we had this in place, you could go pull money down for that pot to reimburse yourself for that money.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Lopez?
Yeah. So like, with all these amendments, how come there were so many of them? Like, you'd figure after 2 or 3 of them, you'd be like, okay, you'd have it right. You have it figured out. I mean, why we keep going back to the drawing board?
Most of them were about schedule, Commissioner. There were a lot of substantive changes in the deal when you got to last year, but I would tell you the first 3 or 4 were mostly about deadlines and schedule. And as I was saying to the chair, honestly, it's pretty common for us to move deadlines around with developers because our philosophical approach in your development agreements has been, we kind of try and hold the developer's feet to the fire. We find out what's a reasonable schedule to satisfy conditions, to commence your construction, to build your project. And development is not a linear business all the time. So it is pretty common in this development and a lot of others for a developer to come back to us and say, I need to adjust the schedule. I need to move this deadline. And usually we as a team are pretty accommodating about that. Our point is, look, tell us what you think. And if things change or, this one started during COVID, right? Actually right before COVID. So if I remember right, you signed this in March of 2020. So a lot happened, right? The thing I would tell you was that when we got to 2023, there were a lot of substantive changes to the project in that amendment. So a bunch of them were about schedule till we get there. But after this thing stalled and we came back, there were a lot of changes. The costs had changed and gone up. So we modified some things there. There was originally in 2020, there was an athletic field component of the project that eventually just went away and is no longer a part of it. There was a health club that was originally contemplated and the things with the Y and so forth. That's not a part of the program. So I would tell you that last amendment, amended and restated agreement had a lot of substantive change that were about evolution of the deal.
So at what point have you ever seen like a developer say, well, okay, this isn't gonna work, I'm just gonna move on?
That has happened, right? That has happened. And sometimes it has happened in the conditions period. It's obviously much worse if it happens once you get started and once you start paying money. The thing I would tell you about this one versus deals where you bond is it's pay as you go. So the developer will start pulling down money and so forth, but the program here is that he's to get paid slowly, incrementally over time. So if you had a failure during construction, it's one thing if he never gets through his conditions period, never gets his financing, we're never going to pay him anything. Okay, anything at all. If by contrast, he gets his financing, and we're going to take a hard look at that financing, right? We're going to feel pretty good if we close that he's got loans and equity and has all the capital stack to build. But if something happens after that, a contractor fails or something, if for some reason there was failure after that and we had paid some money, it would be a problem. But the truth is you wouldn't be very deep into the $9.5 million that's contemplated here. He's got to collect that over a 20-year period, and he's got to perform to do it. So that philosophically, that's what's going on here. It's a really good question. It's a very fair question. In these deals where it's pay as you go, we have a lot of control because if there's default, big default like you're talking about, or even smaller things where they're not maintaining it the way they're supposed to or whatever, we could shut off the money. So that's a powerful remedy when you're pay as you go.
So at what point, I mean, that's been drug out this long that we could have had somebody else in there and been done by now. That was a very promising developer that has a great background and no problems. And we could have been so far ahead by now, but it's been drug out.
Yeah, that may be that is arguably a fair comment to make on the period between March of 2020 through COVID and through the end of 2021. That may be fair. I mean, you could argue about whether that's fair or not based on COVID and what was going on with the world, right? And it also assumes there are developers lined up around the block to come in and do this project. And I don't know whether that's true or not. Maybe you do. But once we get to the end of 2021 and he's trying to close and he's on the doorstep and he asks for an extension and it doesn't come forward to this body, there's an argument that that's not his fault. And then we kind of stalled for a year and kind of went back and forth with him about whether this thing would come back to life or not. So there is a period of time when I think he would feel pretty vigorously that it's not his fault. It's not my place to take sides there, right?
No, I get it.
So anyway, that's what I would say about that, Commissioner. I hope it's helpful.
Yeah, a little bit. I was just think, I mean, because if he's hung up on it, then we can't put an RFP out on it to see if there's other developers that want to come.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's why they're not lined up around the corners because we can't put an RFP out, right?
Yeah, that's true. While you're under contract with him, we're not going to put out an RFP or enter anything.
Right. So that's why we don't have contractors listed around the corner because you don't know. So answers that question. All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. My fellow commissioner just raised some good questions, but since I was here from the beginning of when Mr. Lanier came to us, no one else had come before or since. And that's not to say if Mr. Lanier is not successful, and I pray that we give him the chance to be, that's what this is about. This deal that we have before us tonight is essentially the same one that we've heard before. There were any number of other projects that I won't say stalled, but were delayed from the original dates of their completion because of COVID. And so it's unfair to put this all on him. But for the fact that this body did not get the opportunity as he requested back in 2021 to move forward. That counts for a great delay of time in a situation where interest rates were constantly rising. This did not come back on the agenda till 2023. And according to some research I looked at with the Federal Reserve, it said the Fed raised the interest rate 11 times between March of 2022 and July of 2023 to combat ongoing inflation. We've all felt it. Look at your credit card interest rates. That could be simply devastating for a project of this kind. So we're really here today because Mr. Lanier, you've heard council say that he has satisfied one of the two major conditions. And so this is about running out of time. We have the time. The principal thing we need to address tonight, and this document addresses that, is giving him an additional 365 days. If you're listening to the news, the Fed is supposed to lower interest rates. Hope they do. But instead of saying another 5 weeks, 6 months, let's take it to the year. And if he's not successful within that time, and that's not to say he's going to drag it out, I'm sure you'll hear him say that, then I would have to ask for, as a point of order, that decorum be maintained.
Thank you, Commissioner. I would advise the audience to please refrain from making comments. It is important that we act with decorum and allow us the opportunity to have the discussion. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro
Commissioner.
Tem. So we have the opportunity to extend the time so he can get financing. This is commonly done. That's really all it's about. And I'm happy to see that there's been another provision that does protect the unified government and therefore the taxpayers with regard to attorney's fees. Now, I know we haven't heard from Mr. Lanier right now, but we've heard any number of times. So I would move right now to approve this agreement.
If I may, we still have to hear from Mr. Lanier.
That's right.
There was a request by fellow commissioner to have public comment and or public information come forward. So we haven't had that. We've had it from Mr. LaSala, unless you don't want to hear from Mr. Lanier. I mean, I'm just trying to accommodate the request. You called the meeting. I want to ensure that we give your conferees a chance to present their position.
Yeah, if you're referring to me, Commissioner, I don't know what the tech situation is. Colleagues, it's up to you all on what you want to do and what you want to hear. I also know that there might be some conversations on whether or not a year is appropriate or if we should go shorter. And so maybe for those of you that are wanting to have that conversation, we can move that conversation along. But for me, just speaking as Commissioner Davis, if tech continues to be an issue, I don't necessarily need Mr. Lanier to respond if he's not able to. But that's just speaking for Commissioner Davis. Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Davis, I just wanted to provide the opportunity. You had requested Mr. Lanier to have an opportunity to speak. We wanted to ensure that he was provided that opportunity. Commissioner Townsend, I'll come back to you. The board is lighting up.
Well, I hadn't completed my statement before you moved on to. So if Mr. Lanier is listening, I did not mean to try to truncate the situation, but we don't know what it is. If he can come back, that's fine. My motion still stands. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kane.
I think a year is a little long. And I was thinking more like 6 months, but if I'm on your end, I'd probably say 9. He's worked really hard for this project. I don't know how many times we've seen it. You had COVID and then we didn't get to see it as commissioners. It was pulled where we didn't get to talk about it. So I'm just thinking the year's a little long and I would be more comfortable with 9 months, and that's just me.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner Kane. Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. To Commissioner Kane's suggestion, I am amenable to 9 months. I don't want to restrict Mr. Lanier any more than we have already done. For me, I am amenable to the 9 months timeline. And I'll take my very brief moment and just give my comments. This project has been in front of this commission as long as I have been here. I have been here since 2020. I know this project very well. I've seen it change over the years. And I still believe and support this project. I've supported it since day one. There will be nothing to make me not support this project. We talk about development in our downtown area. And we're wanting to develop, but yet we're cherry picking what we think is going to be best. Well, what needs to be best is for our community. And our community is telling us they want development. I'm sure developers want to come, but I don't think they want to come when they see what's happening to developers when they come before this commission or before this government. The stall tactics and the games that are played just because you don't agree with the project. So as many times as I've said this, Mr. Lanier, there will never be words to say how much I apologize for everything that you have had to go through, every hoop we have had to put you through. One of the very few minority developers, and we've done what we've done to you. For what reason? You care about this community. You want this project to flourish. We want this project to flourish, just as you do. So I am ready to finally dot the I and cross the T and give Mr. Lanier the chance that he deserves. And stop the stall tactics and the games. And I want to tell developers out there, do not be afraid to come to Wyandotte County. We want you to come and develop and grow our community. You have a commission that supports that. We support an economic development future and vision. So please come and help us grow our community. Thank you.
Commissioner Stites.
Stites District 7. So I tried to make sure that I get all the information that I possibly can to make I'm a commissioner that's the furthest west that you can possibly get from this. So I want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing for the people that in this area, for our community. And one of the things that I kind of prided myself on is making sure that I'm get all the information available. And if it's appropriate, I'd sure, and it's going to be up to Mr. Kendall, but Wyandotte EDC, I would like, and this is just, if he's not prepared or doesn't want to, I would like to hear from Wyandotte EDC once again on the stance of our economic development for this area, for Wyandotte County, and their stance on it and why they think that this project is something that's beneficial for downtown. Mr. Kendall, if that's appropriate. I don't want to I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but no, I don't know. I'm just asking if
I would go to legal to
Okay,
see what
that's
this,
fine.
we don't have public comment
I-
down here, so I
I
want to ensure that so I'll ask legal for an opinion on that.
Yes, the chair can decide whether or not to allow someone to answer the questions of the commission that is not part of staff.
okay, well.
And then the commission could then vote to override if they,
Well, and I'm not wanting to turn this into a big draw thing. I do believe that there's some from past meetings that I believe that Wyandotte EDC has put information out there that shows that this project is positive for downtown. The Merc, the hotel, a vacant building that is falling in disrepair. So that's what I was just trying to get at. But I agree that I don't think that the year would be something that I would be willing to entertain. So if there's some conversation that we could have, and where did the year come from? Who came up with this year? Was that Mr. Lanier or where did that come from?
So we were requested by several of the commissioners calling the meeting to put a year into that. Clearly, that
Okay.
is a commission decision. We have the means to change that. But that's where the year came from.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Hill.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I am wondering, first of all, I appreciated the information that we received from Mr. LaSalle. And one of the things you mentioned, number one, was that a couple of the things that were not solved prior of those two, one had been handled. I would really like to hear from Mr. Lanier on the finance piece. I think it's very important that we hear that our constituents hear that, is because I've heard many different renditions of what is or what is not, but I would like to hear it from Mr. Lanier if he has the capability and audio available. I would really like to hear that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Hill. I guess I would request legal. Can we request that Mr. Lanier answer that question, or should we wait until all the questions have been asked by the commission?
That is a question for the chair.
Okay.
You can request for him to answer the questions.
If Mr. Lanier is online and available, Mr. Lanier, could you speak to Dr. Commissioner Hill's question in reference to your financing?
I can do that. Am I able to be heard now?
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again for the time. So regarding the financing, there was steps and processes that take place in getting financing. Financing has been discussed with lenders who have been around this process for quite some time. There were some things that have to get done before lenders actually push a project through loan committee. And some of those things we were working on that we got through, meaning planning and zoning final approvals starting in January, and was completed back on February 29th at the Board of Commissioners. Since we had to go submit a new application due to the Kansas Community College taking what would have been the athletic field and the removal of underground parking, those two things caused us to have to go back and resubmit a application for zoning, rezoning. Once we get through that piece and where we are today, our financing can move forward. This has to be viewed as a project that is live, that has merit, and the banks have seen where this project has stalled or not gotten some support over the past couple of years. So everyone wants to make sure that as we move forward, there was a green light of opportunity for when them to roll their sleeves up and provide all of the underwriting, all of the legal work, everything it takes to actually create and close loans, that we actually have something that will be there. So since we just got our final approval from your board back on February 29th, now we would have the opportunity to say without a shadow of a doubt that this is a fully vetted, fully supported project by the unified government. And then we will be able to move into the financing phase. But prior to that, our ability to truly say that we have a project was unclear, because even without getting a planning approval, there would not have been a project, regardless that we did ask for additional time on our developers agreement. So now that we have just one item left, and that is the financing component, we have nothing else to deal with other than that. We'll be able to concentrate on that and then come back and deliver our financing, proof of financing to the committee.
Dr. Hill, did that answer your question?
Almost, it almost answered it. Mr. Lanier, can you help me to understand? I apologize. I'm still pretty new. You said that now that you are fully vetted, that you have this project online with the unified government. And then after that, explain once again what has to happen. You said, now that you're fully vetted from there on, could you explain kind of what you're saying after that?
The point I wanted to make is that there is a process of going through approvals, and the banks look at several things. You know, is the developer agreement put together? Are the incentives in place? Check. And the next thing is, are the IRBs completed as far as the bond work? Moving through planning and zoning. Does this project have full and final approval? If any one of those things aren't there, well, then the financing doesn't have merit. And so in order to get the financing, banks and investment committees and inside banks want all of these things done. And then once those things are done and they have the ability to properly create a closing, which means a lot of manpower, administrative, legal work, that can proceed. Realize that we have not had any conversations since January when we did not get our extension. So we have to go restart those, but guaranteed, just as much as you commissioners or the commissioners prior to you, Dr. Hill, we've had bankers on this project for quite some time as well. So, and it's not something new, but there is a clear stated process that banks go through when it comes to allocating the projects in front of them. And now that we are there, we have full standing to actually move forward and complete our financing.
Thank you. And Mayor Pro Tem, thank you. The question has been answered.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lopez.
There we go. Yeah, I was just, I always say this is one of, we talk about doing good for us, our community, and doing the right thing here. And we've got a commissioner in his district that he can't be here, and we can't honor his letter and move this reschedule. And I don't want to waste anybody else's time. I'm just saying that any one of these commissioners here would be upset if we didn't honor their letter if it was the other way around. And I just don't want to waste anybody else's time, but he expressed his, he asked us if we can reschedule it just so he can, because he doesn't know much about it. And then, some of these commissioners have been here long enough to know about it. And then the last time that the mayor wanted to disapprove of this, 5 of us are saying, well, we don't know anything about it, but then we got this letter, 2 days before that meeting. So there's just a lot of stuff just don't make sense here, but I just want to waste anybody else's time. And that commissioner is asking if can we just reschedule this whole thing for a month or something so he can be here? Is that possible?
Commissioner, if you're asking the chairman, I didn't request the meeting. I would ask legal what process would be if that was to even be considered.
As with a regular motion or a regular meeting, that would require a motion, a second, and a majority of the commissioners to continue the matter.
Well, then I'd like to make a motion to reschedule. So we'll just see how.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I would say that as this was a special meeting, that there probably needs to be a date certain or for when it is rescheduled to.
Can you look at your calendar? I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying that out of respect for this commissioner, because any one of these commissioners would be upset if it's the other way around. And I mean, it's prolonged this long. We can wait another month.
Commissioner Townsend.
Point of order on this. This question was brought up at least half an hour ago. So I believe it's out of order procedurally now. And there was, I believe it's out of order and we should have moved on. This concern was brought up at least half an hour ago.
I respectfully, as chairman, I'm going to respectfully disagree with that comment. We're moving forward with discussion. The motion didn't get a second, so the motion fails for lack of a second. But it was a request. And I'm not in a position to make that request. I didn't call the meeting, and that's why I went to legal. So if I disagree that it's out of order, I went to legal to get that certification, but I do appreciate you bringing it forward. I have Commissioner Kane next.
Commissioner Townsend, would it be okay if you adjusted your motion from a year to 9 months? We can get this going.
Here's why I would ask the commissioners to consider a year. Number one, it was at least a year when Mr. Lanier came to us in early 22. And it was not put on the agenda until early in 23. So that's a year gone. Secondly, we can't say for certain, nobody in this room can say what the Federal Reserve is going to do with their interest rates. We're hearing publicly they're going to go down, but this would give him the opportunity to take advantage of that for 1 year. It's costly for the public, for staff, for all of us to come to a special meeting. And we won't have to nickel and dime anybody's time for again. So while I want to see an extension, I urge us to give it a year. That's the same year that it wasn't put on the agenda. And gives him the opportunity to take best advantage of interest rates that's going to make this project go.
Thank you. If I may, I will take the liberty as chair of the Economic Development Committee. I've been with this project since its inception. And I can remember the commission collectively at times voting unanimously to move this project forward. However, when it came, and some of the reasons that we asked for extension was parking issue came into question, and we had to extend the agreement a couple of times. So I do want to remind the commission that this came before the Economic Development Committee, I believe, for the 5th extension. And at the time, the committee gave it much discussion, and the plans had changed a little bit in reference to what are we really looking at here? Because I believe part of the discussion was the change to the location across the street, and there was much confusion in committee. Is it the original plan we're talking about? Is it the amended plan we're talking about? And we took the time in that standing committee to walk through that, and it was a unanimous decision to grant 275 days. And I made the motion not to approve it so that we could get it out here for discussion so it wouldn't go on a consent calendar. And I remember, if I remember correctly, Mr. Lanier's legal made the comment that if we're not here at the end of 275 days, we are done. And if that isn't an accurate statement, I would ask, Mr. LaSala or somebody, please correct me, but I've kept my timeline and my notes and through all of this because I know it's an important project and many of us have been supportive of it from its inception, but questions have been raised, timeframes have come into consideration. They got the parking issue resolved with the BPU. In the meantime, the community college purchased the ground and that caused a change. Then we had the interest rates and we had the financing issue. We've had a number of things, but COVID did impact it, and I'm aware of that. And I think we've really tried to be as open and as transparent as we can in assisting this project through the process. But to sit here and think that we haven't, I would state that's a somewhat of a misstatement because it has had plenty of time to percolate with many of us, except maybe our newer members. And that as chairman of the Economic Development Committee, I wanted to ensure that the committee knew that that timeline that was expressed by Mr. LaSala is pretty accurate. It's pretty spot on. So thank you, Mr. LaSala, for that. I do have another, Ms. Commissioner Townsend, please.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And as a member of that same standing committee, I recall the discussions in early 2023. My reference is to the year of 22, that it was not heard by any standing committee and not on any agenda. Thank you.
Commissioner Lopez.
Yeah, so I have a question for you, sir. So do we look like, I mean, what if we do business with a developer that has lawsuits against them or breach of contracts in the past? I mean, is that doing good business with? If we decide to do that with with any developer in general?
Are you asking my opinion?
Yes, sir. Yes,
About
sir.
whether
Yes,
it's a
sir.
good idea? I would say it would depend on what the
I mean,
lawsuits were
if you have
about.
like 3 or 4 breach of contracts, isn't that kind of a red flag to move forward with the developer? Like if that's why that our mayor was trying to disapprove of this from the get-go, maybe he knows something we don't know.
It can be. Commissioner, with great respect, I don't think I have the frame of reference about the lawsuits you're talking about.
No, I know, it's just
I don't
asking.
think
I
I
don't
know
know.
what
I'm
we're
just
talking
asking.
But I would also say it's up to the governing body whether you contract with this developer or not. That's really not. up
Or
to
not
me.
just, I mean, I'm just saying in general, with any developer, is it probably not a good idea?
I think it depends. I think it depends on what the substance of it is, right? I think it depends on what the fight was about and whether the developer was right or not. Whether I would have to know more.
Yeah.
I think
Right.
because look, the development business is a hard business, right? There
Yeah.
are developers that are going to get sued.
And
That's
it-
just going to happen.
If I may, could I pull us back in a little bit? We want to ensure that, one, we're not disparaging anybody by asking opinions that may be of legal consequence.
Yeah.
That I do appreciate the fact that people want to know information. I do want to also state that we have a commissioner that wants to speak, and Commissioner Davis, please.
Thank you. Okay, I think the majority is in favor of moving this project forward. We're somewhere between 1 year and 9 months. I'm going to take a liberty to say, I know Commissioner Townsend, you had made that motion for approve. And I know there wasn't to approve for 1 year, and there wasn't a second. So my assumption is that motion has died. I don't know if that's what I'm going to go ahead and assume. I do want to ask Mr. Lanier if he's I hope the tech works out. If we were to do 9 months instead of a year, while we cannot predict the future, we cannot predict, right, the market, we cannot predict the cost of materials, all that stuff. But if we gave you 9 months, are you confident that with that time, it is adequate and you would be able to pull off this project given this particular circumstance?
Commissioner Davis, I would not ask any more than 9 months. We would be more than happy to take that time frame. Obviously, the bulk of the past 9 months that we were working under, 6 to 7 of those months took and for the planning process to work itself through. So 9 months would be an adequate amount. It would be a generous amount. We appreciate that. That would give us more than enough time to restart our activities with our consultants and then move this project forward accordingly.
Okay, then with that, I will make a motion to.
I would, as parliamentarian, I know there was a motion, but then I believe that it was stayed for further discussion.
Thank you, council.
Yeah.
So I would allow a little time to make sure that there's not a.
Okay.
Is that was
Okay, gotcha.
for discussion purposes.
I will
I believe the motion was for a year, if I remember
It was
correctly.
for a year. There was no second called for at the time, so the motion was not dead. However, in light of subsequent discussion, I will amend the original motion to 9 months.
David second.
Staff, did you get that? The motion was for a 9-month extension. Commissioner Townsend, any other comments?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second to change the time frame from 1 year or 365 days, I believe how it's in the contract, to 9 months. Do we want to put the 9 month, the exact dates in, council? Or do you want, okay, can you do that without us making that part of the motion? Okay, the liberty to do so. Thank you. Okay, thank you. All right, we ask clerk, please call roll.
Roll call, Hill,
Aye.
Kane, Lopez,
No.
Stites, Davis,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Townsend, Ramirez,
Aye.
motion carries.
Thank you, committee. I do want to state that the reason why I ask about the extensions, Mr. LaSala, is we had another project that was affected through COVID, and there were some issues that come forward, and there was 5 extensions, and I know there were some that considered that a length of time, and I just wanted to use that as reference when we start talking about the amount of extensions. But I do appreciate you having the opportunity to express that other things have come forward with that. So it's not like we haven't terminated contracts that have requested additional extensions. Commissioner Kane?
Is the mayor pro tem supposed to vote?
No.
He is allowed to vote. But the presiding officer can vote when it's the mayor pro tem. And would have to in the matter of a tie. Or if it.
Yep. Thank you. Committee, the resolution stands before us. We extended a contract. All we did was make a motion to extend the contract for 90 days. Do you want to pass the resolution? The 9 months, but it wasn't a motion to pass the resolution. The motion was made to extend the time frame to 9 months. I just want to make sure that we are on point to do what we need to do. Let us run the meeting and we'll walk through the process. No public comment tonight in reference to this issue. We have to have a motion to approve the resolution. We approved.
Point of order.
I think to be safe, the presiding officer is correct. I would do a vote on the resolution.
So
With the amendment, to amend the resolution to reflect the 9 months.
Council, for clarity, I just want to ensure that I'm providing the necessary guidance. The motion was to extend the contract for.
So it's a new, it's a new contract. It extends the timeframes of the previous one, but it is in fact a new a new agreement. It's not an extension of the old one. It is a new agreement.
So we have to make a motion on the new agreement.
I would move to approve the resolution. I think that would be the safest manner, acknowledging the 9 month change.
Okay, I've got a lot of fingers going up, a lot of talking. I've got also lights going on. So let's follow the process so we ensure that we get this done properly. You all called the meeting. I want to ensure that we provide what's necessary to get it done. Commissioner Townsend.
thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you for your observation. So I additionally would move to approve the resolution of the development agreement, which includes the adjustment for the period of time for 9 months.
Davis, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Townsend. We have a motion and a second. I'm going to go to discussion. Commissioner Lopez.
First of all, I just want to say something real quick. I just want to apologize to our commissioner that's not here. Number one. Number two, I want to apologize to our public for silencing you. That's it. Thank you.
Please maintain your decorum. It is important that we do so. I know these can be emotional issues, but it's extremely important we maintain our decorum. Thank you, Commissioner Lopez, for making that comment. I can't tell you how many times that it has been stated here, and it was just recently stated in one of our budget meetings when we didn't have commissioners present. And I remember making the same comment here in the full view of the public that we should have all commissioners here when it comes to issues that affect their district. And I echo your comments. I echo your comments. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. The clerk, please call roll.
Roll call. Hill.
Aye.
Kane. Lopez.
No.
Stites. Davis.
Aye.
Bynum. Townsend. Ramirez.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-1.
Thank you, committee. Yep. This takes us to the second item on our agenda this evening. That's the public hearing and resolution on ordinance on the TWG Victory Hills Industrial Revenue Bonds. These are two items. However, our first action is to conduct a public hearing regarding the issuance of the industrial revenue bonds for Victory Hills LLP, and the project is located at 745 North 78th Street in the amount not to exceed $43 million. I'll ask staff to make some opening remarks.
Do you want, I would call, you can do Jeff Conway up to make some opening remarks.
Mayor Pro Tem and the members of the commission, it's Jeff Conway Legal. This is an issue that has been around a while, and I think probably the easiest thing I can do is just introduce the developer's representative, Kurt Peterson from Polsinelli, and he can lay out what the project is and the posture at this point.
Mayor Pro Tem, good evening. Kirk Peterson with Polsinelli, 900 West 48th Place, Kansas City, Missouri, here on behalf of the developer, which is TWG Development. I have with me Jackson Taylor, the development director over here. Before I begin, in case you start feeling being serious, a wave of deja vu when I begin speaking, this $43 million project is not new to the commission, except for, to be fair, Dr. Hill, Commissioner Burns, and also Commissioner Lopez, since this all happened before you all came. On October 9th of last year, the Planning Commission unanimously recommended this project to the full commission. On October 26th, the full commission unanimously approved this project. And on December 11th of last year, the Planning Commission unanimously approved the final plan and the final plat. And there is a building permit that is ready to be picked up when this proceeding would hopefully successfully conclude. So I also want to remind you of who this is. This is a big project, a lot of capital investment. I want to give just a few moments, Mayor Pro Tem, on who TWG is, because they're new to the community. They're based in Indianapolis. They were founded approximately 15 years ago. They specialize in all different types of housing developments and communities across the country, and they've completed just about $2 billion worth of these types of developments in our country. We're thrilled, at least I'll speak for myself, and I think a lot of us, that they found their way to Kansas and that they had a lot of options, and they chose Wyandotte County to try to make their first investment to the tune of $43 million. So if we're able to put up, there's a couple visuals for commissioners. This would be a good time to put those up, please. As we advance to the next slide. It's actually the other one was the right one. Thank you. And the second slide would be great. So just to get your bearings on where we're at always, we have a 25-acre piece of property that's bounded by 78th Street to the west. You can see Taromi there to the south. You have a church to our southwest, a senior living community just to the north, and a residential to the northwest, south, and east. So that's kind of that green area where the yellow arrow is pointing on the screen. And then also you can advance to the next slide. Thank you. To zoom in a little bit. That's that green area I was speaking of, and you can see the yellow bounded project area. So access to this project comes in two locations. It comes on 78th Street, which is a right in, right out. That's the street going north-south on the left side of your screen when you look at it. And then you have Taromi, which is the full access point down running east-west at the southern edge of the project. The project itself, which we can advance the next slide, thank you, is a multifamily project. To get your bearings there, you have 78th Street on the left side of your screen running north-south and that access point I spoke of. It's a multifamily project that has 5 buildings, residential buildings. Those are the bigger of the buildings. It has a clubhouse that you can see over at the access point at 78th Street. The residential buildings are 3-story in height with pitched roofs. There's a total of 152 residences. There's a number of amenities, which you can see on the screen. You can see the clubhouse I just mentioned at the access point at 78th Street. There's 2 separate playground areas. There's community gardens. You can see just to the east of that clubhouse. There's bike racks, electric car charging stations. There's an aerated, and I know Mayor Pro Tem, and I mean this seriously, there's an aerated detention area that's a pond that keeps the water going and sprays it so we don't have a stagnant detention pond. So it truly is an amenity there in the northeast corner. You have a trail that goes around it. You have a gazebo just off the trail and some other open areas across the entire site, green spaces. We can go one more slide, please. This gives you a rendering looking to the north, the east, kind of northeast. You see the clubhouse in the foreground on the left. You can see the rest of the project. You can see the amenity in the back corner there that I was speaking of, the pond with the walking path. The architecture, building materials are always important. We have buildings made of masonry brick and fiber cement siding, so solid quality, long-standing building materials and design. So with all that as backdrop to know what's the substance of what we're talking about, again, reminding everybody, you're acutely aware, I know each one of you are because we can't get away from it, that in this country, we have a housing, you could call it a problem, you can call it a crisis, you can call it lack of supply. We need housing across the country. In the state of Kansas, we have a housing issue. In Wyandotte County, we have a housing issue. So this isn't specific to Wyandotte County, but it's very real. We lack housing, and it's not a certain type of housing, it's housing at every price point, every demographic. Every county you go to needs quality housing. So for this project, TWG's target demographics within that problem, right, where they're plugging in, are household incomes in the 40,000s to 60,000. So you kind of visualize that. And so in looking up on local job postings to see what jobs are out there for people with those kind of salaries for their household, here's the just, you know this, but kind of get your juices flowing on to target residents here. There was tons of postings for UG employees in that range. Bank personnel were on there. There was pharmacy employees. There was entry-level firefighters. There was early childhood teachers. There was warehouse personnel and many other, what I would call essential workers in our community. So given the lack of quality housing at all price points, many of these workers that I just mentioned end up living in not quality Wyandotte County housing, or they end up having to drive farther and go to Johnson County or Jackson County to live, even though they work here. With this particular project before you tonight, Victory Hills, given the median income in the particular census tract where this is located is about 55,000, the project is eligible for federal tax credits to help the project happen, specifically low-income housing tax credits. Now, for some of you, when I say low-income housing tax credits or federal tax credits, you have feelings, right? You have thoughts about it. Some even might have negative connotations, but I'd ask that everybody slow those thoughts down and focus on what it really means to have federal tax credits for a $43 million project in our community in KCK. In reality, it's a good thing. In fact, it's a great thing because it means that TWG can afford to spend $43 million on what you're looking at on the screen on a high quality residential community with all the amenities I just mentioned, and yet still keep the rents and that $800 a month to $1,600 a month. It's because of the tax credits. It's because the feds give us money and the state gives us money. That's the only reason you can deliver something that expensive and the price ranges and be available for those essential workers I just mentioned. So It's also worth mentioning, it's not just a high quality project. It's at the right location. It's perfectly situated, in fact, for this target demographic of essential worker. Telling you what you know, 11 of the UG's top 25 employers are within a 15-minute drive. That's the maximum 15-minute drive. I'm not going to read off the whole list, but you have Providence, you have the junior college, you have Village West, you have Urban Outfitters, you have Amazon. I could keep going. Cities across the metro, both sides of state line, all the counties you can think of are looking for projects like this for the reasons I just said. We have a housing crisis. This is not just a Wyandotte County issue. So the topic tonight about this project, hopefully that refreshes you and gives you a good sense of what the project is all about. What's before you tonight is proposed industrial revenue bonds. This is the public hearing where you decide whether that makes sense for this project. What does that entail? That includes two things: a sales tax exemption, Kansas sales and use tax exemption for construction materials and items used in the construction of the project. So it helps reduce the cost of building the project. And the second is a fixed payment in lieu of taxes schedule. This isn't stealing your line. This isn't a BPU thing. This is the idea of real property taxes. What will those be? And establishing a schedule for 10 years to help the project move forward. This is the exact approach. I'm looking at a lot of you. You've been around for all these. This is the exact approach we've used on each of the Western Wyandotte County multifamily projects that happen. Every single one of them has used this exact approach to make sure they're financeable and that they move forward, which I think everybody agrees has been really successful over the last 10 years that we've been doing that. So please know that just like those Western Wyandotte County multifamily projects, IRB financing here is a critical part of making sure this high quality housing community can happen. It's critical, it's essential. In my opinion, this will be something, this project, if this moves forward, if this gets supported tonight, it'll be something all of you are proud of when it comes out of the ground. It will help provide additional quality, more affordable housing for the essential employees in this community. And in the meantime, there'll be other community benefits. I'm not going to do it the whole list, but kind of hit some highlights. One would be population density, rooftops, as the retailers call it, right? You start adding more rooftops like this, and this is, I had conversations with most of you over the years about this, and I think everyone agrees with the premise. It's the rooftops, it's the density, it's the people with the credit cards and the cash. That's what brings more quality retail, restaurants, et cetera, services to the State Avenue corridor from 78th Street on east, which I think everybody agrees is a shared goal. Construction jobs is an obvious one with a project like this that is a great capital investment. Property tax, this land, all this land right here, this 25 acres generates a whopping $4,900 approximately a year in property taxes. When this is done, based on working with Matt Willard, the county appraiser, this would generate taxes of something like 230,000 plus, which I know is a big deal. Look at the UG administrator and how hard the task is right now of getting things right sized and budgeted. That's a lot of tax dollars that otherwise aren't going to be there. So, and I guess one more I'd mention, one more community benefit. You all worked hard on a policy that says, that's in place now, that says when you issue industrial revenue bonds, that a portion of the fees that come out of that go to a local impact community benefit. So that would happen here as well. So in conclusion, Mayor Pro Tem, we would ask respectfully for your support tonight for industrial revenue bonds for this project so that we can move forward. And we would intend to be, I said, permit is ready to be picked up, close our financing within the bond council for the UG would probably tell us within about 3 weeks or so. I might be pushing them a little bit after the approval. And we have a project that's under construction on this site by this summer. Be happy to answer at the right time any questions that you or anybody on the commission would have. Thank you for your time.
Committee, any questions? Mr. Peterson, I have a few questions if I may. Thanks for pointing out the deep retention pond issue. It's an issue I'm pleased to see you address. Thank you. I think you called them guardrails that we had discussed when we met prior to this meeting. Would you walk the commission through the process of how this appeared before us in reference to, is this the one that has the KDFA financing already set up with it?
Are you asking more timing? Are you specifically like when this was going to go and then the ice storm in January? Do you want that narrative? Or are you specifically asking about the the resolution that was turned down 6 weeks ago, just so I go on the right trail.
Yeah, it's been a couple of weeks. We had 14 days to respond or 15 days to respond.
KDFA financing.
I think it's important that the commission understand what happened with that. And if that's the avenue that we want to take as a commission, to have the negotiations occur prior to coming here and the incentives offered, so that by the time it gets here, the incentives have already been offered. And if we choose to take action against those incentives, then we're anti-development. The messaging can be handled by those that have already made the negotiations, and then bring it to us and ask us for an up or down vote on it. Could you walk us through maybe why you went to the state and had the KDFA funding in place, and then give us the ultimatum to approve the project?
Sure. I hope it's not an ultimatum, but, and I wasn't aware of the narrative you laid out, just for the record, since it's official record, but.
Well, it's just an educational process, because I anticipate this won't be the first one. I mean, this may be the first one, but it won't be the last one that we'll have this discussion on. I think if we remember correctly, when the mayor made comment that he wasn't, not that he was supportive of low income tax housing, it was that he was supportive of it if it was a 55 and older senior community, because of the location where it's at. And that was his concern. And then I think there was a statement made that if we're not supportive of 150 some million dollars of investment in low income tax credits, then we would ensure that the community knew that. I think those comments were made in that meeting. I know I was there. The comments were made. And my comment would be, why would you make that kind of a comment when the mayor sets the vision as to what a community should embrace? And when he made that, let's make it 55 and older, and it was stated that, no, we don't want to do the 55 and older, that it was going to be, low income tax credit housing. And I don't believe that the mayor is opposed to, he just had his priorities because of the location this one was in.
Let me address your initial question, and just for the record too, that I did not make any, there was witnesses, I didn't make any statement like the one you just made.
No, I'm not
Okay,
saying you
just-
did. I'm just saying
just making sure.
a statement was made.
Mayor Pro Tem, so I am going to dial it back to give context to let's state the question and then I'll answer it. The question that I'm hearing is, did this developer TWG apply for KDFA, sorry, it's different, KDFA financing? And that was the subject of the resolution that you all considered a number of weeks ago. I'm going to start with that. As you heard me say, all the approvals when I went through the dates were done by the end of the year. And the next step was to go to committee to have the essential IRBs considered. And that was set for the first Monday in January. And you may remember there was an ice storm, and we were on the agenda and we were planning on going, and the ice storm hit and we got delayed. So we were told at the time, of course, that happens sometimes, we'd go to the February meeting, we'd have it considered, go to the February full commission, and then be on our way. And what ended up happening, and we can stay high level for right now in case we need to get into the specifics, but we were not able to get on an agenda. Even this is the first time we were actually able to get on an agenda since the ice storm, which freezes up a $43 million project when you have investors like JP Morgan, which we have, and a bank that's ready to go, and sometimes you lose your place, you lose your project. And so what we did is we said, look, for the overall financing, there's the incentives piece that only this body can give. It's called IRBs. And there's the overall financing. So without getting too deep into financing, what we did, because we became very concerned that we were going to lose the opportunity to do this project, given the time that was going by and inability to get before the commission. So we went to the KDFA and said, we're going to put an application in. And depending on how long this gets pushed off, we may come with part of our financing to KDFA, and we would get the rest of it through the IRBs. But we always knew we had to come back here, and the project either goes or doesn't based on what this commission decides. So the KDFA, call the KDFA an intelligent backup plan to keep things moving. Now, we never had to go that direction because we found out there was going to be a meeting on April 11th. Here we are, and the project's going to go or not based on what happens tonight. So KDFA was a backup plan, and we're just fortunate we didn't have to go there because we got a meeting. So thank you for that.
Commissioner Bynum.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. 2 questions. The dollar amount of the IRBs being requested tonight is how much?
40 up to 40. We always say up to $43 million.
Okay. And tell us again for the record, what are IRBs? Whose money is that and who pays for that?
So in fact, you know, the proper thing to do, if you don't mind, Commissioner, because you have a lawyer that specializes in that, I do know, but let's listen to, if you're
Yes,
okay with that,
please.
Mr. Wimpy. with
Thank
Gilmore
you.
Bell.
Hi, good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Commissioners. Kevin Wimpy with Gilmore and Bell, UG's Bond Counsel. I'm also here tonight with my colleague Bill Burns, not to be confused with our absent commissioner tonight, but he's one of our multifamily housing experts within the firm, also working on this project. Madam Clerk, I do have a short set of slides. It'd be a good time to cue those up, but it's been several months since I've had the opportunity to address you. So to introduce myself to some of the new members, you know, spare me 30 seconds and refresher for the rest of you. But again, we are your bond attorneys engaged to represent the unified government. And on this proposed transaction, you know, there's multiple parties, there's developers, bond purchasers, tax credit, all represented by separate counsel. You just heard from Mr. Peterson, who represents the developer, and we are your representatives and advocates as your bond counsel. As you're aware, the unified government can issue bonds for all sorts of purposes, infrastructure and public buildings and so forth, as well as for economic development projects similar to this one. And on all those, our role as your bond counsel is to coordinate with staff, prepare legal documentation, make sure we're following the statutory procedure, and ultimately render our opinion as to the validity of the transaction and bonds and tax status of the bonds. So thanks for sparing me to refresh on that. And now I do have a handful of slides that'll address some of Commissioner Bynum's questions, and also happy to try to address any you might have when we're through here. Next slide, please. So Mr. Peterson already oriented us, obviously just highlighting where the project's location is here. So we can skip to the next slide. Thank you. So this slide attempts to boil down the requests and talk about the IRBs and financing that's contemplated here. Again, up to $43 million is the request in the application. And this is driven mostly by state law and tax law, and I'll try to identify when I'm hopping back and forth. But 43 million addresses a state law requirement that for property tax abatement and sales tax exemption, which are the two incentives requested here under IRBs, there's a requirement in the statute that all the costs must be financed by bonds. And so when Mr. Peterson refers to a $43 million project, that's why the bonds are sized at that amount. And we'll note that there are two series contemplated here. One is a tax exempt piece at $38 million. And then a second tag on taxable piece to fill out the rest of that 43 million to address the state law consideration that I just mentioned. For purposes of the A series, the tax exempt series, that is intended to be purchased by Cedar Rapids Bank and Trust, which the developer brought along for this transaction. So it'll be privately placed with that bank. And then the B series is more like your typical or usual IRB, where the developer will be purchasing its own bond in order to access those incentives. And again, this is an incentive request. IRBs come with sales tax exemption on construction materials and up to a 10-year property tax abatement on the project. In this case, that property tax abatement is considered a 50% abatement and is for the maximum of 10 years. Like any incentive request, this is fully at this body's discretion. There's nothing compelling you or requiring you to act or approve. So it's completely at your discretion whether to proceed tonight. Next slide, please. This slide gets into some of the tax code minutia that I mentioned. I don't want to get too bogged down here, but I do think it's worth going over briefly so that we can really hone in on what's going on with the A series, the tax exempt series. When you hear tax exempt bonds, typically we're referring to, and in your mind, you're probably thinking of governmental projects, you know, your streets, sewers, and so forth. And the federal government provides its grant of a tax exemption to lower your borrowing cost on those types of projects. The tax code also reserves tax exemption, the benefit of the tax exemption for certain qualifying private activity bonds. And included in that list is qualified multifamily facilities that meet certain affordability criteria. Listed there, I know there's several sub bullets, but there are two tests that refer to the amount of units, the percentage of units offered, and at what percentage of the area median income there. And those affordability restrictions are in effect for 15 years from when the project begins operating. For practical purposes for this project, as mentioned, tax credits are involved, and those actually require the full amount of affordability, 100% affordability in order to access those tax credits. So these metrics will be met easily with this project. The requirement to issue these bonds and be granted those tax credits is that at least 50% of the project cost must be financed with tax exempt bonds. And so the A series, the tax exempt series, meets that criterion in order to finance at least half the project with those tax exempt bonds. And again, jumping back to state law, the 5 million taxable series that's going to be placed with the developer is again just to access the property tax and sales tax incentives. Okay, one more slide, please. I mentioned a moment ago, your usual IRBs or your typical industrial revenue bond issuances are purchased by the developer. And again, just solely for purposes of the sales tax and property tax IRBs. Again, here, the bonds in this case are being issued to provide construction financing and satisfy the tax code requirements that we mentioned on the last slide. So here we're highlighting a few of the key differences and similarities between those, what I'll call usual buy your own bond deals versus what's contemplated by this developer. First of all, there's a third-party purchaser, that Cedar Rapids Bank and Trust of the A series, rather than developer buying its own bond. Second, IRBs are issued up front and actually provide construction financing here to satisfy the tax code requirement. In comparison to your usual buy your own bond deals, those are issued at the end of the project, and that's to maximize the value of the property tax exemption for the full 10 years upon completion when the project's fully valued. Here, where the bonds are being used to provide construction financing, obviously that's at the front of the project. So the first couple of years while the bonds are outstanding will actually be during construction. That affects the payment in lieu of tax schedule. Again, ordinarily it'd be over the 10 full years of value after the project's completed. Whereas here, the pilot schedule or payment in lieu of tax schedule contemplates that the project is partially complete for the first 2 years of that pilot schedule as they're under construction and the project isn't fully on the tax rolls. Final key difference is maturity. The 2024A tax exempt series is longer than the usual 10-year abatement term. And just like if you were buying a house and chose your amortization schedule to repay your loan, that's part of the deal there. We do have the ability to issue those IRBs for a longer period. Some of the key similarities between your usual IRBs is the first key bullet point is that there's no repayment risk of the bonds and no credit risk to the unified government for those bonds. In fact, there's a statutory prohibition of cities pledging their full faith and credit to repayment of industrial revenue bonds. So you have that statutory shield. And also these bonds are not publicly offered or subject to public disclosure. Again, they're being placed with CRB2. And so your role as that conduit issuer remains the same in this case. Second, the usual performance covenants in that payment in lieu of tax agreement are present here as well, including timely construction, local minority and women-owned business metrics, maintenance and upkeep of the property and so forth, with the tag on of the affordability metrics required by the federal tax code. And then final slide here, please. So for tonight's action items, there's a public hearing required by state statute that's been called for tonight. That'll be your first item. And then after that, there's consideration of a resolution of intent and an ordinance authorizing the issuance of the bonds, which begs the question, why 2 action items? The statute contemplates both a resolution of intent and an ordinance authorizing the issuance of bonds. Ordinarily, you see the resolution at step 1 before construction, and then at or near completion, the developer returns to have the bonds issued. Here tonight, for all the reasons we've discussed, both items are taking place on the same date. And again, there are several other bodies, including the Kansas Board of Tax Appeals, that reviews these proceedings, and that's how they're used to seeing things packaged as well. So there'd be familiarity with that process. The schedule from here, if you choose to proceed, would be we'd coordinate with the other parties on the transaction to arrange closing several weeks from now, and that payment in lieu of tax schedule by state law would begin in the year 2025. And at closing, again, the developer would pay cost of issuance and the UG's origination fee for industrial revenue bonds. Hopefully that addressed some of your questions. Happy to try to field it.
I appreciate the slide presentation. To confirm with you, the unified government as the conduit issuer of IRBs, those bonds do not go to the bottom line of debt of the unified government, nor add to our bonded indebtedness of the unified government in any way. Is that correct?
They are your bonds, they're UG bonds, but you're in no way liable for repayment of those.
Thank you. finally, Mayor Pro Tem, just a comment. I was at a meeting just this morning where Dr. Anna Stubblefield was the speaker. She's the superintendent of the Kansas City, Kansas School District, and she shared with the group that the starting salary for a teacher in the KCK Public School District is $50,000. And that is the highest starting wage for a first-year teacher of any district around us. So that starting salary of a teacher in our school district is right in the middle of the target income range for these apartments. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Lopez?
Yeah, so what did you say, Peterson?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so what did you say? What did you say our tax revenue on this? You said something about it was like $4,000, but then it's 200 and some thousand.
Yes, sir. Using round numbers, I said $4,900 right now. Again, I'm rounding, and the estimate that I learned through the YEDC, who is working with Matt Willard, the county appraiser, was approximately $232,000 in property taxes once constructed.
Okay, because I like how you said not like you said it in condescending or anything, but
That's okay.
the way you said it was, we have a housing issue. Which we do because of all the tax abatements we seem to be giving away. And then, but on this whole deal, you're asking, it's a 10-year tax abatement. Well, that's why we're here in the first place, is all the tax abatements. No wonder we have a housing issue. So, but then also on that third party purchaser financing, well, doesn't that affect our bonds APR somewhere? I mean, if there's a third party, that means that bank's going to want his cut. So the APR is going to be a little more somewhere.
Commissioner, what I heard was your attorney just said it didn't, and that's really, if you want to ask him again yourself, it's really not a developer lawyer question.
Or maybe you can go back to the third party purchaser financing, what you meant by that. How about that?
Sure, no problem, Commissioner. So the 2024 A series is tax exempt series. CRBT is the purchaser. Again, that's the developer brought with them. In simplest terms, think of it like your mortgage lender if you're buying a home. So they're their private financing. It's wedged, to use a crude term, it's wedged into a tax exempt bond deal to accommodate the federal tax requirements. And these bonds they're leasehold revenue bonds. And so the lease payments made by this developer are assigned to that bond purchaser. And again, the UG is not liable for repayment of these bonds.
Okay, so, but on the other, for Peterson here, the 10-year abatement, and the 232,000, well, that's just going to cut it in half. If you want 50% on a 10-year abatement, that's exactly. We have our low house, this is, there are housing issues because of all the tax abatements, and then it just kind of opens the doors for, maybe, I don't know, government housing to come in, and that's just kind of puts us in a spot, but I get that. But anyway, all right, thank you.
And I just want to affirm your math. I totally agree with your math, but where I end up probably and you get to vote, I don't. But the ultimate math equation was 232 divided by 2 for 10 years, plus it increases. There's an inflator.
No,
is a lot more money than the 5,000 today.
Right.
And then certainly in year 11, for as long as the useful life, there's gonna be a lot of taxes. So that.
No,
that's the
I
rest of
get
the math.
that, but and then yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Stites District 7. So Kurt, when you were talking about the estimated 230 for the pilot, is there a built-in escalator in that, or is that after year one, or does it escalate throughout the course of the project?
So I'm going to say it back to you so we're really clear on the record. So 232 was the YEDC Matt Willard exercise estimate, what it goes on the books for. The requested abatement is 50%, as
Right.
Commissioner Lopez is correctly identifying. And then that amount, and frankly, not to get too in the weeds, but a lot of you guys have done this a lot. There's 8 mills that are held harmless, which ends up being another 4.6%, something like that. So there's even more money that comes in on top of that. But then that pilot amount that we're talking about does inflate at 2% starting in year 4 every year. And then if for some reason the developer, this won't happen, but didn't abide by the LMW requirements, it would be 4%. So we built that. I know Commissioner Townsend's been, if I can say that, outspoken in a good way, I think, on making sure that's always the case. That is absolutely the case here. So that's the possible 2 different inflators.
Yeah, and that's what I was wanting to make sure that I was tracking it right, that there was a built-in escalator. And I'll give this as just a food for thought. $4,900 a year is what it's currently paying in taxes. It would take, if that ground remained at that cost with nothing being developed on it right now, it would take us 47 years to get what the year 1 pilot of 232,000. Year 1. Let that just sink in for a little bit. I know we talked about 55 and older. I would like to see down the road that there be a real concerted effort for us to look at some 55 and older projects. They are needed, as we said, and talk about how many the housing that's needed all across the spectrum. And I think this is one component. And I also think that 55 and older is another component that's been identified that I would like to see a developer back in front of us with a project of that sort. Thank you.
I agree.
Commissioner Townsend?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Commissioner Stites got to one of the issues that I just wanted to clarify. I've heard so many numbers. And in this homework packet, which included, this is Exhibit A, the payment in lieu of tax schedule. Did you say currently it's $4,900 in taxes that property is in?
It's
4,900.
4,916. I'm
Yeah,
rounding, but yes.
4,900, right.
Yes, ma'am.
According to the schedule, if this project goes forward, when would you start paying the annual pilot, the payment of lieu of taxes?
Mhm.
I'm saying, would that be 2025 would
So
be the first year?
let's make sure, because you're right, you're spot on. That's the place. So we're looking at Exhibit A, everybody, which I don't have the numbered version to know what page, but if anybody's getting to that page, it's the place to look. Yeah, I got the same one. Thank you. So this is getting into nitty gritty. This is good.
I don't want to get too much into nitty.
Just a little bit, just a
wanna
little
make
bit of
sure
nitty gritty.
that I am following that currently, this is bottom line. Currently,
2025.
$4,900 is the tax
Yes, ma'am.
yield on this property. If this moves forward, the first year, it would be paying as a payment in lieu of taxes for what it will ultimately be worth after completion, $47,775.
Yes, ma'am. That is the first of 10 years of pilot payments in 2025 of $47,000. You're exactly
And
right.
then in the 10th year, it's $135,136, assuming that the MWB LM minimums are met. It would be more if they're not met.
Precisely right.
Okay. Another question I had, and thank you, Commissioner Bynum, for bringing up the issue. And I think our bond counsel talked about that this is not a debt of the unified government, no obligation to pay. We talked about 55-year, we need housing, I agree, at all levels. But in this project, it is not just limited. If someone who's 55 wants to rent, they could. If somebody who's 25 or 35, is that correct?
Absolutely right.
Okay. What would be, again, putting into perspective the number that Commissioner Bynum cited with salary for a teacher in our district, starting salary? What do you see as the average cost of what, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartment? These are things that people would want to be concerned about. How much would it cost to move into one of these units?
Great question. So it has 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom. And the general range, and this is general based on the program and the caps and all that, we've been saying 800 to 1,600. So you can imagine the 3 bedrooms, the most expensive, the 1 bedrooms are the least expensive. And, you know, there's a swag around that of $50, but it's that gives you a really good sense of the range that $800 to $1,600 a month. And so somebody coming in for a 1 bedroom is going to be right around that 800, whether it's 760 or, you know, 790 or 800 exactly.
You're saying TWG, the project proposer, they have a personal investment in this project?
Absolutely.
Is the amount that they're putting in, would that be considered average, above average for a project of this size and type?
Yeah, very standard for a federal tax credit project like this. You can kind of hear all the details of taxes. This is the pattern, just like, although they do all types of housing, including federal tax credit housing. You heard they've done 2 billion. So I know just from working with them, this is very standard what they've done across the country in terms of amount that they put in and versus JP Morgan versus the lender and all that.
Those are the questions that I have for the short run. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hill.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. Peterson, I just noticed one of the comments in this proposal, and I just would like for you to just kind of give us a little more detail on that.
Sure.
This is in regards to goals for LBE, MBE, and WBE participation. And in this, it says we will use best efforts to meet the LBE, MBE, and WBE participation. So could you explain that a little further?
Yes, ma'am. I'd be happy to, Dr. Hill. So, and this goes back my entire career of working with the unified government, not just with IRB, but every context when we have an LMW agreement like this, this is very standard and good and workable. So I'm looking at it right now. The agreement sets forth on the second page. It's labeled D2 for what it's worth in my packet. It sets forth the percentage of total construction cost for local, minority, and women professionals, enterprises of 12%, 6%, and 4%. So that's setting the goals immediately. So what happens is, and I long ago had this conversation personally with TWG, I introduced them to compliance. I say, this is who you're going to be, meet each other. You need to be best friends because you need to rely on them to make sure you're getting all the right lists and where you publish, and make sure everybody in this community, local, minority, women, know about the opportunity for the project. And then you use best efforts to make sure that they have every chance to bid. And then you go through, I'm telling you guys have been seeing this a million times. You go through it, you pick whatever's best. You make sure all those records are submitted in a certain format to the UG compliance office. And then at the end of it, there's a definition, we can look it up if we need to, of exactly what does it mean to use best efforts to achieve the goals. It doesn't mean you always will or have to achieve the goals. We like it when the developers do, but if they don't, they at least have the compliance office reviewing all their information, everything they did, who they went to make sure that they did truly use best efforts to reach those goals. That's in sum what that agreement is.
Okay, and then do you all go back and see their best efforts? Do you take a look at it or?
So in my role as developers counsel, I kind of laugh. I know I'm going to get a nod of the head. One of the very first conversations I have about projects coming to this community, or I have a conversation about LMW, and I'm getting big nods, and I make it happen immediately. I put it in an email. This is really important. But the reason I'm saying it like that is I don't every day go out and meet with subcontractors and do the bidding. That's up to the company. And then at the end, I make sure that they're getting their paperwork in correctly. And then who reviews it isn't me. I mean, I do look over their shoulder a little bit. It is the UG compliance office that goes through it and make sure they can report to all of you whether best efforts are.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Commission, anyone else? Commissioner Lopez.
Yeah, just have a quick question. What, when you said this address where it's at, how many parcels are you bringing together on this?
Ooh, I try to have the answer to every single question that could be asked.
I mean,
Now,
because
it's been a while.
I
It's the
see
church.
one parcel here. But then, I mean, there's no way this.
We had to replat it is why your brain's, there's 4 parcels. I cheated. I phoned a friend. There's 4 parcels And we're replatting that. We did replat it. We haven't recorded, sorry. We have an approved plat that takes those 4 parcels, Commissioner Lopez, and makes it 1 lot so we can build on it. But we haven't recorded it because you wait until you make sure that this body approves your IRB financing. Then you go record your plat, close your financing and move forward. But 4 parcels is to answer your question. Soon to be.
Oh,
one,
I
hopefully.
see. Okay, so. Okay. Yeah. All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to move on for public comment. We will kind of let the developer and staff give us a extensive overview as to why we're here with the project in the form it is. But now I will open the public hearing. And I will remind everyone the comments should be limited to the topic of the item per the commission rules and procedures. And I will ask the clerk if there were any notifications were received from the public who wish to express their comments in favor of the item.
No comments were received.
Okay, is there anyone present who would like to speak in favor of this item?
Mayor Pro Tem, we've had 3 individuals sign up.
Okay, and
I
they're
don't know
in
if they're all in
favor of
favor.
the item. We will get to those that are opposed shortly. Okay, please identify yourself and place of residence, please, and you'll be given 3 minutes.
Hello, yeah, okay. Carolyn Wyatt, 359 Troop. I am in favor of any type of development. I have no problem with development. You said 55 and over. I think you need to stay with that because I don't think older people want to be running around, younger people running around into the apartments because they have friends younger, make loud noises and everything. So I think it's 55 and over, it should stay that way. I also think that in order to get what you need for is persons getting hired, if you want to say minority could be women. So you have to state that minority could be African-American, have to be.
Ms. White, could you speak into your microphone?
I'm
Because
sorry.
we want to make sure we can hear you.
I want to say that minority could be women. So when you want to try to get every race, so Afro-Americans, you have to specifically say what you want because you don't have Section 3 here, which I think one of the commissioners should go for that Section 3 ordinance because that way you are getting everybody that you need. Nobody's getting left out. Section 3. And then another thing, I think that for as teachers, salary, it could be high because they do a good job with the kids. But I think a lot of teachers they hiring in the district, they don't live around here. Superintendent, they don't live around here. So they're not paying no taxes around here. So you got to take in that consideration. They don't live here. They live outside here, Lawrence, Overland Park, most of them. So they don't live around here. So they're not contributing. So I'm just saying that so you'll know that because I know superintendent been here. And if our taxes go up, their taxes don't because they don't live here. They money, they take it back to where they live. So they're not contributing here. At the same time, I'm for good teachers. I'm good for education. Kids first. And another thing I want to say that we do like development. I'm not against development nowhere, especially the Northeast.
1 minute remaining.
But what I'm saying is that for its convention center, it's too small. 300 people, class of unions are here. It's more than 300 people. Family reunions are here. It's more than 300 people. I'm not against it. It's too small. It's just too small. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, we have someone else.
Fanny Hill.
I'm Penny Hill, Wyandotte County. I'm all for development. I'm glad to see development, but we are in desperate need of low-income housing. And I think you should consider making some of those, maybe 25% for low income, and $50,000 in this area is a big income. You have mostly in this area, people who are barely making $30,000, $40,000, and some of the seniors, 55, disabled, they don't have that kind of money. And my question is like, I'm all for development, but I think we need to look at the tax credits. I mean, if we can give the land can't we cut the tax credit? There's gonna be a lot of money made off of those apartments. So I'm feeling like the pilot is good, but I pay the pilot and the tax. When I built my home here, I didn't get a dime worth of tax. I built my home on 43rd Street, so I wouldn't pay high taxes. I'm still paying $5,000 today. And I'm on 43rd Street, and they never gave me not one incentive of taxes for 3 years it took the developer to finish building my home. So I feel like if we can get the developers, and the developers would consider not taking so much tax dollars, because this is a county that's being oppressed because of the high taxes, and we need help. And we expect the developers, when they come in, to help us. So we're asking you to consider the 10-year tax break. Maybe you can cut it down to 2 years. Until they finish building it, because there's going to be a lot of money made. And I think they should pay the pilot like I pay, as well as the taxes. So if you and the developers can work together to come up with some kind of way to bring those tax dollars back, or at least cut it down, maybe after you finish 2 years, because a lot of developers come in, and then when it's time, 10 years is up, time to pay the taxes, they're gone, sold the building and made their million. So I'm asking you to consider that.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone else?
We have Laura Marsh. I believe Miss Marsh has left. No one else was signed up.
In favor? Yes, yes.
This is one evening I didn't know I was supposed to sign up. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Commissioners. My name is Greg Kindle, President of the Wyandotte Economic Development Council and the KCK resident. I'm here in support of the issuing industrial revenue bonds for TWG Victory Hills to develop 152 unit multifamily development located at 745 North 78th Street. Normally, I would focus my time on how there is less than $5,000 property taxes generated on this property today, and that this $43 million housing investment will generate more than $100,000 in taxes during the pilot period, and then more than $230,000 after the pilot period is over, should you approve the request. And these are all net new taxes. Generating more revenue for the community is usually what I'm up here talking to you all about. And it is an important piece of it. But tonight's conversation, in my opinion, is about whether you all believe we should use the same incentives in distressed census tracts as we do in Western KCK. Today, we do 50% abatements on nearly every market rate apartment project near the Legends. And we've supported those investments because we want to increase housing across the entire community. And these projects are incredibly expensive and very difficult to finance. And we want to remain competitive in the market. Today, we want to use that same process right here in a distressed census tract. I think it's worth noting that we don't determine that when a census tract is deemed distressed. That's based on median household income thresholds through the federal government. But being in a distressed census tract adds a level of risk to the developer seeking that financing. The disposable income in that location is more limited. And at the same time, we want quality housing. We want the same level of amenities. The median household income in that zip code is just shy of $55,000. The federal government says we shouldn't spend more than 30% of our household income on housing, whether it be rent or mortgages, which means in this zip code, we shouldn't be spending more than $1,375 a month on rent. The rent on these apartments are $800 to $1,600. So if your salary is $30,000 to $60,000, $70,000 in this market, if you want to buy a home in Wyandotte County, finding a home that's $90,000 to $210,000 is nearly impossible today. And I want to make sure that our support for this project is clear. This isn't about creating poverty housing. This isn't about Section 8 housing. This is about middle-class housing. They're using federal tax credits as a financing tool. And I think one more point that maybe hasn't been stated is that without you all approving this request, and that's your choice, the taxes on this project per door will be twice that of what similar projects pay in the Legends area. We think this project should be treated the same and providing the equal level of amenities and investment. We ask you to vote in support of this request, and we thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Kendall. Anyone else present care to speak in favor? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to this item? Is there anyone online who would speak in opposition to this item?
We have no hands raised.
Thank you. Is there any, that's the same as the virtual, correct? I want to make sure that we have phone and virtual. See, if there's no other comment, I will close the public hearing. Would the applicant care to make public, would the applicant care to make any closing statements?
No, thank you for asking, but if there are more questions, we're here.
Okay, great. Seeing none. Commissioner Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Davis, District 8. So many of the things that have already been said, I was going to say, so I did not want to be redundant. But I do want to emphasize, because there was a comment made, I forgot who, forgive me, about the developer building this and then leaving. There is a mandate when it comes to using low-income housing tax credits for a 15-year ownership. And so if they wanted to leave, they can do that, but they have to do that after those requirements have been fulfilled by the federal government. They would not be able to leave beforehand, or else they would be subjected to penalties, not just obviously the public will, right, of Wyandotte County, but these are federal dollars. That's a federal program. I don't know about y'all, but I don't want to get in trouble by the federal government, right? I want to do what they say. And so I do want to emphasize seniors can live here. Seniors can live here. Seniors can live here. They can live here. They can live at any light tech project. If the majority of the applicants are seniors, they can go ahead and put a stake in and say, yeah, this is where we are at. And so I just want to make that very, very clear. There is no restriction, right? Seniors can live at this particular project. There's another comment that was made about the a pilot and to just kind of parse this out. The payment in lieu of taxes that we are discussing is just about property taxes, right? There are still payments that are being made in year 3. We're talking 6 figures, over $100,000. Right now, that property is generating about $4,900. And so we all can do the math on what the benefit is to that. But in addition, something we did not fully discuss, colleagues and you all, this is made public, it's in the agenda. There's the cost benefit analysis, which has estimates on what revenue would be generated by the project. So we have the pilot payments that we discussed that are about property taxes. We didn't discuss BPU. The estimate for this particular project for a BPU, I'm reading this as, and someone correct me if I'm incorrect, city utilities and franchise fees is $464,064. And so that is in addition to the pilot payments that are made. And so there's also estimates on sales tax. There's also estimates on income taxes, right? Because we want to grow our economy. We want to grow our community. And so with that, Chair, I'll just ask if we can, because I know there are 2 actionable items that need to take place. If we can be reminded of what those 2 actionable items are, just so that we can get recentered and then hopefully get out of here in a decent hour. Thank you.
Mr. Whippy.
Sure, yeah. Kevin Whippy with Gilmore and Bell. Happy to address the 2 action items, Commissioner. So the first is the resolution of intent, and that's what the statute contemplates to really boil it down, bless the payment in lieu of tax schedule, the tax abatement, and your intent to issue these bonds. And attached as Exhibit A to the resolution is that payment in lieu of tax schedule we've referred to throughout here. The second action item is an ordinance required by state law to issue bonds. And again, you're used to seeing these spread out in time with construction of the project occurring between the 2 for normal IRBs. But because these IRBs are anticipated to provide part of the construction funding, they're being considered on the same agenda tonight. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And with that, I will make a motion to approve a resolution of intent to issue revenue bonds for this project, which is TWG Victory Hills LLP.
Bynum, second.
Committee, any comments? Any questions? Seeing none, clerk, please call roll.
Roll call. Hill.
Aye.
Kane. Aye. Lopez.
No.
Stites. Davis.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Townsend. Aye. Motion carries 6-1.
Legal, that covers both items on the resolution, or do we need to go to item 2 and have the additional discussion on the ordinance?
The vote covered the resolution, but not the ordinance. So you can have discussion if the commission wants discussion on the ordinance.
Okay. Commissioner Davis.
Move to approve an ordinance authorizing the issue of industrial revenue bonds for the project, that project being TWG Victory Hills LLP.
Bynum, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments? Commission? Seeing none, clerk, please call roll.
Roll call, Hill.
Aye.
Kane. Lopez.
No.
Stites. Davis.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-1.
Thank you, committee. With no further business to come before the governing body at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Dave, second.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Please call roll.
Roll call, Hill.
Aye.
Kane. Lopez.
Aye.
Stites.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. That concludes our meeting for this evening. I'd like to thank you for your attendance. For those that had the patience to wait till we got to this part of our agenda, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.